Hello, my name is John Marshall, and I'm the manager of guest relations here at Mount Vernon, and you are now at a very sacred spot. It is the tomb of George and Martha Washington. And George Washington, lead-lined mahogany coffin, is actually placed in the marble coffin that you see on the right, Martha Washington on the left. Now you'll see two obelisks, and they actually are memorials to people who have owned Mount Vernon after Martha Washington died. Bushrod Washington, his mother's name was Hannah Bushrod. This is a memorial to John Augustin Washington III, a great-grandnephew who ultimately sold Mount Vernon. And he sold it to a group of ladies in 1858 called the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. If you would take a step over here, you'll see a very important flag, 13 stars, and it is referred to as the Commander-in-Chief flag. And it was flown wherever George Washington was headquartered during the entire 8½ years of the American Revolution. As you'll notice, it has the 13 stars of the 13 states. A little different than our stars today, the 6-pointed star, the 13 stars representing our country at that time. It is a ceremony that is very important, and it's a ceremony that includes a pledge to the flag. And so if you would all join me as I lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This sacred spot is a wonderful place and a great opportunity to talk about the legacy of George Washington, his character, and his commitment to what he called this grand experiment. His character was such that when his soldiers became frustrated in Newburgh, New York, they're waiting and waiting for the peace treaty to be signed. They don't think they're being treated properly by the Continental Congress. A group of them actually suggest and are thinking about planning, marching on Philadelphia, taking over the government, and suggesting that George Washington be the king. When he heard about that, he was distraught. He called them together, and he reminded them, looked them in the eye and said, "Your brethren in the field didn't die to create a king. We have been created by Congress. We report to Congress, and most importantly, the military is subservient to the civilian government." Perhaps he could have been a king, but he certainly did not want that to happen, and he made sure that it did not happen. Now, when the war is finally over, it's very interesting, and many people commented. George Washington goes to Congress very modestly, said, "Well, I've accomplished the task assigned to me, and I would like to return my commission. I consider it a public trust, and it should be returned to the governed who select our government." Now, he's the most powerful person, and he returns. He leads a revolution, and he retires. And when he's President of the United States, he is the most respected leader. He's the only leader we've ever known. And they could have made him president for life. And I'm sure he understands that's what important is not being elected president, but in this grand experiment, having a peaceful transition of power to the next president. A very important legacy, very important aspects of his life. And now I will call upon you, take the boxwood wreath and placing it between the marble sarcophagi of George Washington on the right and Martha Washington on the left. And I invite you to do that. would like to conclude this ceremony. George Washington wrote a letter to the 13 governors of the 13 states at the end of the war, encouraging them to create a stronger central government. And at the conclusion of that letter, that circular, he wrote what we refer to as George Washington's prayer for his country. And now, if you would all bow your heads, I would like to read George Washington's prayer for his country. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have the United States in his holy protection, that he would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for their brethren who have served in the field. And finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all, to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without a humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation. Amen. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending this very important ceremony. Thank you.